would one at least have an idea na baka carpal tunnel syndrome yung meron ako? Ano yung usual manifestation sa mga patients having this condition?
If it's early, borrow again your pretty hands.
Pangalawa na yun, Doktor.
Yes, the third maningil ka na.
Yeah.
You have numbness and tingling of these 3 half fingers. Pero minsan, thank you, in some patients, pakiramdam nilang makapal, buong kamay. Minsan kasi hindi na-distinguish ng brain kung anong mga daliri ba, or sometimes hindi aware yung pasyente. But it's usually numbness and tingling of the fingers pag maaga, minsan parang langgam, tusok-tusok. Sometimes people wake up, makapal yung pakiramdam, they don't know why, pero makapal yung pakiramdam ng kamay. Pero in the more severe cases, yung mga taon nang inaalagaan, nakabagsak na yan ng gamit. And then, pangatlo, maningil na tayo.
Sige.
If you look at the hand, medyo may laman. Yung iba, flat na yan. That's a sign of chronicity. Yung years ng inaalagaan, it's very flat already.
I see.
Also pala, if it's early, nagigising ka sa gabi, you have to do this. Parang masakit yung kamay. That's another symptom of carpal tunnel if it's early. You also have sometimes kumukuryente here, or sometimes the whole arm aches.
Oh, okay.
So those are the general symptoms. Syempre,
so is that like focus on the wrist na alone or on the hand alone? Pwede siyang mag-radiate?
Sometimes, but it can also be other things. But that's why it's the best thing to do is pagpatingin. Kasi we're used to figuring out alin ba ang alin.
Yeah. And usually sa mga may carpal tunnel syndrome, ano yung mga activity limitations?
No limitations. Unless you have symptoms, and then ako, I tailor. I see, saan ba? Because I'm a believer na yung gamit ng kamay mo is different from the way another person uses your hand. Their hands. So I see what aggravates ba in this certain person. Like an example, but this is just example, I had a patient, baker. Kasi naka-extend and nagpe-pressure. I had another patient pag sumasakay ng angkas. Kasi when they hold like this. So there's extreme positioning. But these are some rare occasions that I just remember, but it's not standard. So I tailor it to the patient kung what bang paggamit ng, nasan ba sa paggamit ng kamay mo na nag-aggravate ng symptoms, then we can adjust.
So the manifestations are actually case-to-case. On a case-to-case basis. So magkakaiba, it varies from one individual to another.
For me, yes. For me,
okay.
yes.
And how long para mag-manifest? Okay, say for example, meron bang like incidental finding lang muna over imaging studies? Or talagang usually it's symptomatic based na dadating sa clinic niyo yung patient? Or usually sa ER ba yan?
Carpal tunnel syndrome primarily diagnosed clinical basis. The doctor talks to the patient, examines the patient, and then there are other diagnostic tests like a nerve test, but we usually use that kapag kailangan lang ng suportahan yung what we already suspect. Pero primarily, diagnose siya in a clinical setting. We examine the patient, we talk to them, there are certain tests that we do, and then that's how you form the diagnosis of carpal tunnel syndrome.
I see. And di ba sabi kasi when it's a syndrome, ibig sabihin it's a combination of different disorders. But in carpal tunnel syndrome, what's the case?
You get the syndrome where you have the numbness, the waking up at night,
all
the constellation of symptoms, yun yung syndrome.
Kaya siya syndrome.
Yes.
Okay. And ano usually yung mga complications, Doc, kapag nagkaroon ng carpal tunnel syndrome and hindi na ma-manage?
Pag tumatagal, ibang mga pasyente dumarating, Doc, 10 taon na, and then hindi na nawawala yung manhid. In the beginning, sabi ko, di ba parang cycle yan? Naiipit, tas nakapahinga, naiipit, tas nakapahinga. Pero minsan, over the years, tuloy-tuloy naiipit, hindi na nakaka-recover yung nerve. So pag ganun, permanent na yung manhid. Or minsan, like I said, yung laman dito, flat na, minsan hindi na nababalik yon. Pati yung lakas ng hand. And that's the more end or severe kapag talagang hindi nagpapatingin yung pasyente or ilang taon hindi na napapansin.
So is this lifelong?
If you address it early, and then you can adjust, nawawala yung symptoms, then it's not a lifelong issue. It's not like hypertension or diabetes na forever necessary yan. Yung ipit ng nerve can be alleviated.
Okay, so, but what has caused the carpal tunnel syndrome is, say, for example, it's occupational driven. Meron kang trabaho, ito yung lagi mong posture, and that actually has brought about the carpal tunnel syndrome. So, is there still a way na parang maiwasan mo pa siya? I mean, considering na kunyari na manage mo siya, kaya lang, but of course, that same pwesto, di ba, ng kamay na lagi naka-flex. Okay,
Mhm.
so yun yung talagang reason. So paano? Kailangan ba magpalit ng job yung
No
isang
naman.
individual?
It's not occupation driven because again, a lot of people drive motorcycles, bikes, a lot of people use computers, and not everyone naman nagkakaroon ng carpal tunnel. So it's again case-to-case basis. Sometimes adjustments need to be made, and then you see how the patient responds.